All right. Hey there, everyone. I am Sai, one of the founders of Crowdcast, and I'm here to introduce Clay Collins from Leadpages. Clay, how are you doing?
Sai, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show or the webinar or the whatever on the Crowdcast. Thanks for having me on the Crowdcast. Yeah,
for sure. And I'm like super excited because so Clay is one of the most knowledgeable people in the world of marketing. But beyond that, he's also just brutally honest and very authentic. And so we'll dig into sort of the background of Leadpages and the story of how he built a business into basically a multi-million-dollar annual recurring revenue business really relatively quickly, and a lot of it has to do with just mastering the art of marketing. So just before we get started, some quick, housekeeping. If you guys can hear and see us all right, can you drop in like an apple or an emoji of some sort? Anil says super cool. Late says wait for knowledge. This whole thing is going to be interactive. So we want you in the audience to be part of the conversation. We have the ability even to pull up people on screen. So if you have a really fascinating question, and if your question gets upvoted a lot, we're gonna try to bring you up as well. And we're gonna keep this to just under an hour. And one of the cool things about Crowdcast is if you scroll underneath our faces, you'll see a big ask a question or suggest a topic button. We're getting apples, smiley faces, and shamrocks in the chat. But yeah, you're going to see a big ask a question or suggest a topic button. Just type in your question in there, hit enter, and then vote up anyone else's question. Now, we're also streaming this to Facebook. So if you are on the Facebook feeds, there's multiple. We're not going to be monitoring those chats too much, but if you want to ask Clay a question, click on the Crowdcast link at the top and join us here. All right, so let's get started. So Clay,
let's do it.
You are at home right now, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm in my. This is my. So I recently had twin girls, and so then had to get like a respectable, real like family home, and my daughters would have probably all like bad things would have happened to them here. But this is where I work from when I'm not working from my office, and it's a fun little place where I hang out.
Yeah, and it's in Minneapolis, which I didn't know much about until I visited, and I was pretty impressed. And,
awesome.
And you mentioned it's your favorite city, right? It's your favorite city in the U.S.
It is. Yeah. There's just something special when I came here. Every house in Minneapolis is like 6 blocks from a park. I really like that. I believe it's 25 yards from every body of water, whether it's a lake or a river or the Mississippi is park property. So like you don't have the situation where the best land is owned by rich people. There's just I love it here. It's just a clean, great. I could go on statistics and talk about all poverty rates and the Scandinavian mentality and whatever, but I love it here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing. So these Crowdcast talks, it's really about like you. It's really about like the story beyond just the business. So one thing that I like to start off with is to go way back to the early childhood, and I want to hear like a story from your childhood that you don't maybe share too often, but maybe somewhat shaped who you are today, or sort of gives light to what made you.
Yeah. Okay. So my hero growing up was my grandfather, and my grandfather, kind of funny story about him. He's grown more citrus trees than anyone who's ever lived. So he grew about 600,000 citrus trees per year for like multiple decades. And at some point during my childhood, it was about, I think, a 5-year period where we lived on the nursery where my grandfather worked. And I used to just spend lots of time out in the fields with him. And, something my grandfather taught me that I think is pretty profound is that something as simple as growing a citrus tree, which a lot of people might discount, but something as simple as growing a citrus tree is something that you could perfect over, an entire lifetime. So he did this during his entire life. And when he died, his citrus trees like lived the longest. They survived frost. They bore the most fruit. They were the most hardy. And he also charged more than just about anyone else because they thrived in the way that he did. So he really taught me that, something that is seemingly narrow, or like just, something that a lot of people just discount, you could go deep on for a long time. And I really appreciate that. But I remember being out with him in his fields, and just kind of, I would ask him a lot of questions about life and business. And at one point I asked him, like, kind of, you have a lot of things you want, Grandpa, like what's the secret? And he said to me, he basically said this. He said, a lot of people jump from shiny object to shiny object, and they start businesses where they don't really know anything about, kind of what they're doing. And I stuck with what I knew and what I understood, and that made all the difference. And so I really appreciate that perspective from him, and just kind of the simple lessons that tend to go the furthest.
Yeah. We tend to get caught up on the shiny objects and chasing things that not necessarily are aligned with ourselves. And you have this post that around your story, that really like caught me by surprise, because you were just really authentic, and you shared how you spent like a large portion of your life maybe not doing things that was indirect, sort of things that you can't not do, things that are like really exciting for you. But when you started doing that, everything just started clicking, right?
Yeah. I really think that like my life came into focus when I started just excluding everything that I really even had a choice about, right? So I really kind of at one point just sort of pushed everything out of my life that I could not do. In other words, I had to be absolutely compelled to do it if I was going to do it. And my mindset really shifted. I wasn't looking for that thing that was going to make me come alive. I just pushed everything away that didn't make me come alive. And it just created this vacuum. Mm-hmm. And into that vacuum flowed, things that I was passionate about. So I think a lot of people, especially younger people, maybe they've read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, and their goal in life is to like run a business from a laptop, while they go around the world in a balloon, or like whatever, thing they want. And they're just like searching for themselves. I call there's like this generation of like dudes in their mid 20s, and I call them like the lost boys of lifestyle design, because I was like one of them. And I wish what I could tell to like my past self and to this kind of generation of people is like, it's not about finding things. It's about excluding everything that isn't you. And then what is meant for you will then have space to come into your reality in your life.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to get into Leadpages, but I'm curious, what were some of those things that you tried that you ended up pushing away, that you pushed out to make space for it?
Oh man. Graduate school, 2 times I dropped out of graduate school.
What were you studying?
Right after college, I started a PhD program in developmental neuropsychology. Oh, and I left that pretty quickly. And then I started law school, and I left that pretty quickly. So those were 2 things. I was living in a place that I wasn't that passionate about. I was like, screw this, I'm moving. I was in a relationship that really didn't fit me. And it was like almost everything. I remember at one point I decided to do this exercise where I like sat in a chair, and I was like, I'm going to sit in this chair, and I'm not going to get out of this chair until I'm passionate about doing something. And so I'd sit in the chair, and I was like, well, I really have to go to the bathroom. So I am passionate about going to the bathroom. I'm going to get up and go to the bathroom. So I did that, and then I came back, sat in the chair. I was like, well, I'm really hungry now. So, I get up and do that. And then at some point I had to sleep, get up the next day. And then, it'd be little things like, hey, I want to read an article about something, or, I want to write in my journal about something. And this obviously was like, this is a very privileged thing to do, but it was during the summer, and I just quit graduate school and I moved back somewhere else. And so I had like a week-long period to do this. This wasn't like I didn't do this for months on end,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just kind of like honing the muscle of like just being patient and only taking up things that I really wanted to do. And even now I have like, here, I'll show you something cool. I'll be right back. It like 5 seconds.
There you go, 5 seconds. In the meantime, we got a lot of folks from Phoenix, sunny Florida, San Diego, Menlo Park even.
Like, so
Cleveland.
even now I have this is called a kitchen safe. And like, I find the phone to be such a distraction. So I'll set this I'll put my phone in here, right? So you can see this is like, 10 hours, 12 minutes and 0 seconds.
Wow.
I'll put my phone in there and, exercise doing this for like longer and longer periods. And, it just gets the distractions out of the way. The phone will screw your whole life up, behavioral addictions.
That is amazing. So you will put your phone in the kitchen safe box for how long?
Yeah. So I try and put it in there when I go to my family at the end of the day, so I'm not like, messing with it. I'll put it in there. Like I'll go home and I'll just put it in there for a couple hours. Mm-hmm. I try and exercise the muscle of putting it in there for longer and longer periods of time. So I've worked up to 12 hours. I want to do 24 hours this weekend. So I'm just trying to like get it, longer distances. I've got a landline at both houses.
Have you read Deep Work by Cal Newport?
I have. I like it.
Yeah, this is exactly what you're doing. You're like cutting out all distractions to get really focused.
Yep, it's super important.
Wow,
super important.
I think a lot of the times people see, like at this point in your career, people know you as a successful entrepreneur, and it's easy to sort of have that as a story and not see all the work and all the struggles that might have happened before that point. So I really appreciate you sort of sharing that, and writing about it too.
Yeah, I think that my approach to marketing is really defined by this period of my life when I moved back home. I was like 25, and I moved back home in with my parents after dropping out of graduate school for the second time, and started a business. And I felt like such a loser. And I literally couldn't afford rent. So everything I had to do worked. And, there's the copy that you write when you're in your head and, you have these highfalutin ideas about brand or like whatever you want to do. And then there's the copy you write when you're a 25-year-old living with your parents, upstairs in your old bedroom with your old toys around. And you're like, I need to not live here and like move on with my life. And you just write better copy when, it's called gun to the head marketing. It's like, mm-hmm. like what is the marketing that you would do if you had to make it work? And then of course, once I moved, actually the stakes got raised because, hired a first employee, actually had real rent and could get kicked out of my place. More employees we got to, I think we were up to 30 employees before we raised venture capital or whatever. So the stakes were always high. And it's just so interesting to learn marketing in that context where it's like every promotion has to work. Every headline needs to be spot on. Everything needs to be action oriented. And you just can't get lost in your head. And
so you get to like cut all the fat basically when we have that much pressure on.
Yep. Absolutely. And
so my understanding is you had a blog, like a personal development blog that you were trying to market, and that's how you started getting into the art of marketing.
Yeah. So, so when I dropped out of school, I had this idea that I was going to be a professional blogger. It was like around 2007, and ProBlogger was out there. It was like the heyday of blogging, and there were all these solopreneurs that thought they were going to just like write really good content and get a huge following and then put AdWords on their website. And then all of a sudden, they have a business. And so I did that. And I actually think I was pretty good at building an audience at first. In my first 4 months, I got about 3,000 subscribers. So I grew fairly fast for starting from nothing. And I still remember those days. My goal was to get 3 subscribers a day. So I would literally personally respond to anyone who left a comment on my blog and ask them to subscribe to my blog. I responded to every comment. I would go into other blogs and try and be the first commenter and get them to come to my. I mean, it was just like audience building 101. And so I got that audience to a certain size, and I realized, like, in order to make it in this game, you had to get to the front page of Dig. Like, everyone, it was like the heyday of Dig, and everyone was trying to get to the top. And I figured out how to write articles that could get to the top of Dig, and didn't have a lot of money, but I had the skill. I could get to the top of Dig when I wanted to. And so then I started selling that to, I was a social media consultant. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I went to customers, like I had 21st Century Fox and some local startups as clients, and I was just helping them with get traffic from Dig. Back in the day, if you got to the front page of Dig, you would get all these articles and scraping you, like you'd get tons of links and stuff. And so then I did that, and I realized if you get all these links, then you can start ranking for things in Google. And so I started like getting all this free Google traffic, and I was like, holy crap, there's a lot of opportunity around ranking in Google. So then I learned like that discipline, and then rolled that into my consulting services. And then I was like, this is stupid. Why am I selling my time? If I can do this for other people, then maybe I could just do this for myself. And then I started selling either like on an e-commerce basis or as an affiliate. I was in the green niche. I was selling like compost pellets and cordless electric lawnmowers and chicken coop plants and red worms and stuff like that. There was all these things that you could do back then that you can't do that. Anyway, so I got into that, and then and then just that kind of started my marketing career. And then later I started something called The Marketing Show, which I can tell you this story behind that. I was super pissed off because I would write these 3,000 word blog posts expounding on some marketing theory, and I was like trying to make some point, and I'd like craft this thing I wanted to say, and like maybe I'd get 20 comments. And it was around the same time that Gary Vaynerchuk was doing Wine Library TV, and he would just like flip on the recorder, and like it was like unedited, and he just like pull 3 wines off the shelf, and he would drink them, and he would just spew whatever was top of mind, and he was getting like a gajillion views and 100 comments on every video. I was like, this is BS. I'm spending all this time, like 4 days writing this article, and he's just pulling wines off the shelf and getting this coverage. Like, I want to be able to create content like this. So I started reviewing landing pages, and I would just review landing pages we had created for customers. And I was like, here's why it works. Here's the data behind it. Here's split test information. And then I hired this dude, this 18-year-old dude from Brazil, to take the landing pages that we had created for clients and create landing page templates that like anyone could use. And then I'd pay this company in India to like turn those PSDs into HTML, and then I like gave them away on the blog. So I'd spend like 15 minutes reviewing the landing page, and then I'd like give away the template on the blog. And I had the Gary Vaynerchuk effect. We had like more comments than ever before, more anything than I had ever seen before. And but people were like started complaining in the comments. They were like, how do I integrate this with MailChimp? How do I integrate this with Salesforce? How do I upload this to WordPress? How do I publish this to Facebook? How do I, whatever. And at first I was pissed. I was like, I am giving this away for free, and it cost me around like $150 per template to give this away. And then like everyone's complaining, what's up with this? But then I thought, my next thought was, this is actually kind of lean startup-y. Maybe I can, pre-sell a service that does basically what people are asking for. And maybe there's a business here. So I did that, and I got 200 people to give me $200. Nice. I got 40 grand, and which is nothing by Kickstarter standards, but it's still like legitimate. And hired a couple folks from the Czech Republic to build the first version of one was my technical co-founder, Simon, but to build the first version of Leadpages. We shipped that about 3 months later, and then we just kept on shipping, and the audience grew and the product grew. And 9 months later, we raised $5 million. And then we raised another 6, and then we raised another 27. And it's just been a really cool, it's just been a really cool journey, and more than I had ever anticipated. I'm just like glad I'm not living with my parents anymore, frankly.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge jump. So it started out with you giving out free stuff, it sounded like, right? So you were looking at what the folks were doing that was working, and reverse engineering it, and then giving it out for free, which ended up getting you a lot of attention, and then.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people talk about a minimum viable product, like that's where they start, is I'm going to build a product. And I think a better paradigm is to build a minimum viable audience. Like build the audience first, then that audience will allow you to sanity check demand. And then when you've sanity checked demand for a potential product, then you can build it and pre-sell it to them. And, so that's how I did it.
Nice. So that pre-sale was like your way of funding yourself, right? So that allowed you to get revenue from day one.
Yep. And
then the big question that everyone's wondering, what were some of the things that you did to grow so quickly in this first 9 months?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that a big piece of it was that we had an audience. So built into an audience is a whole lot of things. An audience comes with word of mouth. An audience comes with, buyers that already know about you. So even though they don't know about your product, they still trust you. Mm-hmm. An audience comes with, especially if you're in the marketing space, an audience comes with some affiliates that are willing to promote you. An audience comes with, lots of, feature suggestions. And again, a lot of the people in my audience, like bloggers follow bloggers. So a lot of them were bloggers. So they shared lead pages with their community. So I think the difference, I think the reason why we grew so fast was because we started with an audience, and we started knowing how to market. So I think I think it is very true that if you can't build an audience from scratch, if you're not good enough at marketing to build an audience from scratch, you're probably not going to be very good at marketing your product from scratch. So if you can't even get someone to subscribe, what are the chances that you can get someone to buy? And so I just think I think that it was like one of these things where it's like a gajillion days to overnight success. I'd been honing the skill sets, starting with dig and social media and affiliates. And I'd been in copywriting. I'd been honing that for a long time. And then when we finally got a good technical team on board, everything took off quickly from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing to hear. There's like so many questions underneath this. That's actually like pretty impressive and well written. So I'm gonna just start taking some of them as we're speaking.
Okay.
Marie says she's got several blogs. By the way, I just quickly asked. They have blogs that they were trying to market. But she's also the first question, but with 6 questions in the top. Marie is asking, how did you know it was time to acquire? This is more on around Drip.
Yep.
So just to give some backstory, Drip is a email marketing platform that somewhat recently Leadpages acquired. How did you know it was time to acquire Drip, and what was the process like? I heard from Rob at MicroConf, but I'd love to hear the process from your perspective. How did you decide on Drip, and how did you decide to acquire versus build your own features? Yeah,
that's a great question. So just kind of plug, Crowdcast now has a slick as hell Drip integration, which is cool. And it is definitely hands down the best webinar integration that exists for Drip right now. So that's really awesome. We were using HubSpot and having, HubSpot's a good product, but we needed some additional capabilities, and we were looking around at other tools to potentially switch to. And one of the tools that came up was Drip. And I started digging into Drip a little bit more when we were looking at switching from HubSpot. And I liked it so freaking much. And I liked the API. I liked the workflows. It was obvious to me that there were like product geniuses behind the product. So, the thought was, and we had just come off of our Series B where we raised $27 million. And the thought was that, this would be a good next move for us. So if you look at the landing page space, it's like, the number one integration for landing pages are marketing automation services. And I did some back of the napkin math and calculated that we were actually like generating more revenue from marketing automation platforms than we were generating for ourselves. In other words, Leadpages is an unmetered product. So if you buy the $67 a month plan, you can use it unlimited and you make $67 a month. But when people use Leadpages, they double and they triple and sometimes quadruple the number of leads they're generating. And all these marketing automation platforms were charging based on number of contacts. So like Leadpages was making more money for these other services than we were making for ourselves. And the thought was, what if instead of like making all these other companies rich, we could get some of that upside ourselves. So that was one of the thoughts behind it. The second thought was just like, I was madly in love with the product, like head over heels, smitten, in love with the product, and like by extension in love with the brains of the creators behind it. So like Derek and Rob are both technical co-founders. They've built, several products before, and everything from day one was just done to a certain level of like just to a certain standard with the product. So that was the next thing. And, and I think the third thing was, we saw where marketing automation was going, and we thought there were like 2 to 3 players that really got that, and Drip was one of them. And so it just seemed like a win-win. And, I still remember, I don't know if I can share, I don't know. I won't even attempt it, but, I remember the first email I sent to Rob, and it was very simple. I was like, hey, Rob, there's a screenshot of this somewhere. I think it's like when we announced that we acquired Drip on the Leadpages blog, but there's a screenshot of the first email I sent to him. It was like, hey, Rob, I love Drip. Interested in selling it? ? Clay. And like, that was like that was the first email. And then like a little bit over a year later, we could announce it. So it took a long time from start to finish, but I could not be more pleased with Rob and Derek and the Drip team. I think they are first-class product people. I could not be more impressed with the product, with how the acquisition has gone, and how everything has sort of matched up. And I've had like people on our board, VCs, be like, Clay, like this perfect of a thing doesn't happen. Like, just don't set your bar here, because you might be disappointed in terms of just like how, like, I remember we announced the acquisition on day one, and that was when we started marketing it. Like I think we did even like a webinar in the very first day. We got like 800 new customers, and it was just like, it was just a fantastic thing. Rob and Derek and Anna and Zach moved up. So their team moved here, and it's just been a phenomenal process. So it just checked out across the board. It checked out in terms of cultural compatibility. It checked out in terms of Rob's vision and heart, and Derek's vision and heart, and where they were. It checked out in terms of, what they wanted was something we could afford. And it checked out in terms of our company roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to listen to Rob's podcast, just talking about after the fact process, and man, I did not realize the amount of complexities comes with just getting acquired, and beyond just the price point, you're also negotiating culture. Who's going to move where? Does it make sense to move for the new company, or is it for the team that's already there?
Yeah.
It's a very nuanced negotiation, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a different take on that. So I was fortunate in that, you know, our COO, John Tedesco, who's like on the boards of startups around here and has been a CEO, multiple time CEO of companies in the past. Like, he had done this before. Our CFO was at GoDaddy before, so had been involved in multiple acquisitions. And then the guy who runs Corp Dev here used to work for like BMG and is, you know, a good, you know, over 10 acquisitions there. And then we had our board and advisors. So post the sort of that initial like offer that's just very high level, I wasn't involved a lot. And so I would hear some of those podcasts from Rob after the fact, and I'm like, oh God, we did that. Oh God, like to hear some of the stress he went, like I just felt bad. I didn't know he was going through some of that stress, and a lot on my part was just sort of absorbed by this team of people that had gone through this multiple times, and a lot of this was just templated out for them. And then we had a legal team too. So, I mean, not working for us, but through our law firm. So a lot of that was just sort of abstracted away from me. And I wish I I wish I had known, like, let's do some of this podcast. I'm like, it can be hard. I think especially when you're like a smaller team, just the sheer amount of paperwork is, it can be a lot.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, there's a lot of work between starting the company and being at a place where you've raised Series B and you're able to sort of, hire, buy companies. One of the questions that's really relevant for that process is from Barbara. She's asking, as a SaaS founder, what are some of the metrics that you should be paying attention to the most and prioritizing?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this has to do with business model. So I guess rather than speak to, so there's leading indicators and there's trailing indicators. So leading indicators are like, how many leads are you generating, or like how much traffic are you getting? How much of that traffic is converting into a lead? How many of those leads are converting into trials? If you do have a trial, how many of the trials are leading into sales? And you just like, you have this pipeline. And you need to keep track of that. And then there's trailing indicators, which is really like monthly recurring revenue. And I think there's nothing more important to a SaaS business than monthly recurring revenue. I like SaaS businesses, when it comes to metrics, I like SaaS businesses where there's a healthy amount of expansion revenue over time. So, really interesting SaaS businesses, in my view, like their cohorts on a revenue basis grow over time. So like Drip has this characteristic, for example, where even if you account for churn and the loss of customers over time, the customers that do stay, their accounts grow in size to more than compensate for the churning customers. So like Drip has net negative revenue churn. So like even if we added no new customers to the product, the company would grow, or like Drip would grow, the revenue base of Drip would grow over time. And I think those are really interesting kinds of products. Leadpages isn't that way. Like, there's 3 tiers. They all come with unlimited traffic and unlimited leads, unlimited pages. And so there's like a maximum amount that someone can pay us for Leadpages. There is no ceiling on the amount someone can pay us for Drip. Like if you have 1 billion contacts, like that costs more, like it costs more than if you have 500 million, right? So it just that's there. And I think if you can get that in a SaaS product, it's really nice to have, especially when it's like this linear thing that can go on in perpetuity.
I mean, without sharing the details of where Drip is at, I imagine that most of those accounts are on the lower end of the number of emails in their system. And then there's like maybe 10% that's on the really high end that brings a ton of revenue. Does that math generally work out in the favor for businesses like Drip, where you have this expansion revenue going on with that based on the number of accounts?
I think so. I think that there is kind of this new class of business, and I would include like Stripe and Twilio and Amazon Web Services in this category, where like the product is essentially free when you get started, but and it's important that the product is really good for your free customers. But as accounts grow, yes, there is this long tail. I'd say for Drip, it's roughly flat, or maybe it goes up like this. And what I mean by that is that yes, there's a lot of accounts. There's like a gajillion accounts with not a lot of subscribers. But because there's a lot of them, the revenue's high. And then as you go on, you have people that, paying 20, 30, 40, 50, 60K a year. And, and there's fewer of those, but they're paying a lot. So it's like relatively flat. If you have subscriber count on the x-axis, it's relatively flat, or like it goes up a little bit, as you get into the long tail. And I like those kinds of businesses because I think they like enforce a certain level of quality. Like the product has to be really good for people who are just getting started, but it also has to like crush it for huge businesses too. And I like that those incentives are built into the revenue model. I think so much about a business and how it operates is embedded into the revenue model and the incentives that come with that. So for example, if you have less than 100 contacts, Drip is free. So because Drip is free, if you have less than 100 contacts, our onboarding is really good, because it has to be. If our onboarding sucks, then people aren't going to get past 100 contacts. And similarly, so that's, and our support is really good if you have less than 100 contacts. One of the very first things that we did when we acquired Drip was we created the free plan. And the reason why we created the free plan was because we wanted to take all the revenue of people who were paying for the product but not using it off the table. So there are a lot of businesses in the email marketing space that are taking money month after month from people who essentially have no business. And in my view, if you're getting paid by a customer who essentially has no business, it's not a matter of if, but when that customer is going to churn. So we didn't want to acknowledge revenue from customers that were likely to churn, even if we didn't know when they'd churn. So we didn't even want that revenue to hit our books for the first month, and then once we had a free plan, we'd have to report loss, or the incentives would be as such that we'd never able to do that again. So I think a lot of businesses in our space that are like in Drip space, they literally can't create a free plan, because if they created a free plan, they would lose about a third of their revenue. Like I've talked to people who understand like Constant Contacts business and like other email service providers. And if they had a free plan that in any way mirrored ours or MailChimp's, like there would be like massive layoffs and the stock market would turn against them and all this stuff. So we just took care of that on day one. And it's one of the best decisions we've ever made. Like we only get paid when people are getting value from the product.
Yeah, I'm starting to sense there's a recurring theme here, which is putting yourself in situations where you have to succeed, right?
Yeah.
Where you just take that revenue off the table, so you're forced to be amazing for those young earlier customers, and by being forced to be amazing, there's no other choice other than to build something amazing, and that's gonna allow them to actually start paying and eventually go up to those high scale users. Would you say that's somewhat true even for Leadpages as well as you went through your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that's true. I think that's especially true during the early phases. I think it's still true now. I do think
what's like an example?
Like with Leadpages.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that with Leadpages, so drip has to be amazing, because if we're not amazing, then we're just never going to get paid by you ever. Like, we will just never get a dollar from you. Leadpages has to contend with the fact that a lot of people use their landing page service around either like they're doing a one-time launch, or they took out an AdWords campaign. And it's like their landing pages aren't like baked into their website. So in order to have like even a remotely respectable level of churn, like, we have to realize that someone could, like, the pain of disconnect is it's just tiny. And you could just switch from us to any one of our competitors at a second's notice, and without almost any harm to your business whatsoever. And so we have to fight every single month for our customers, and like it's an arms race on features, on integrations. Like, the landing page space is it's a crowded space, and in a lot of ways I like crowded spaces, because it's like evidence that there's actually a market there. I get worried when an entrepreneur comes to me and they're like, I have this amazing business idea, nobody's doing it, and I'm like, maybe that's because there's no customers there, but it does. It forces us to always be on our toes. We can't sit back like Twitter did for a long time and rest on network effects, right? Like, we can't sit back and rest on like some sort of lock-in, like, maybe a HubSpot or a Marketo can. We have to compete every single month for every single customer.
That's an interesting idea, where the marketplace itself, the market being so competitive, is a forcing function for you to really push yourself, to the max, or not having a network effect, for example, is a forcing function. So I can definitely see that. You can definitely explore this idea a lot, where there's a lot of different things that companies can lean on, which sound great. Like, having a network effect is great, obviously, but it's also dangerous, because then you'll just get too comfortable.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And so it's really interesting to watch how just kind of the realities of different business models manifest in culture and in your product team and in the way you do business. And so there's like a very different set of factors that affect Drip than Leadpages, and
right.
And then, like, making this transition from a single product company to a multi-product company. We've got a third product also, and it's just been interesting to watch. It's kind of been the adventure of a lifetime.
It's amazing. I'm going to take a question from Chris Scott. He's asking, I know your webinars with Tim have been a huge part of the success of Leadpages, and hopefully Drip now too. Could you give us a little insight into how you're promoting your webinars and how you're getting so many people to attend? So this is also relevant for Crowdcast.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to say about this. I'm a big fan of like when it comes to marketing, I think you should know the dark arts, but like not use them. And what I mean by that is that like so much of what works around persuasion comes from like P90X, right? Or like Ginsu knives or the infomercial space. And like it or not, infomercials work. Like, if someone is paying for that airtime, to sell DVDs of P90X or like whatever is on, and that infomercial runs over and over and over again, that infomercial is making money. And I think for me, what's so powerful about webinars is this sort of component of demonstrations. If you're selling like the bullet blender, it's like, well, here's how it can make a smoothie, and here's how it can make a green shake, and here's how it can make soup, and here's how, and and you're modeling all these very concrete, specific things that are happening. So in the startup space, for a while, it's been trendy to have these really kind of sanitized explainer videos where it's like, here's Bob. Bob wants, and Bob's a stick figure, right? And Bob wants to do, this or that, and I'm going to show you how in this 3-minute cute video. And I think I came from the perspective of like, let's not go short form, let's go long form, let's go deep into the material, and let's show people lots of examples of how this could work with like use cases that are kind of customized to their business. And so like that was the premise behind webinars. And once those webinars were in place, like there was a couple ways to promote them. The first way, which a lot of people I think ignore, is like we promote them on the thank you pages. So if you opt in almost anywhere on any of our properties, the thank you page invites people to a webinar. So like, here's what's crazy about what most people do on their post opt-in thank you pages. So like, let's just deconstruct where someone is at when they end up on your thank you page, right? So like, there's billions of web pages on the internet. So out of those billions of pages, it's like a freaking miracle that someone found yours, right? So you've got this huge miracle, like maybe they found you on a search engine or social media or whatever. It's like a miracle that they're on your website, right? Now, most of the people that end up on your website are going to churn. So if you just like look at your bounce statistics, the majority don't stay for like over a minute or any amount of time. So most people just leave. So they've found you. It's a small miracle. They found you among billions of web pages. Another small miracle. They don't immediately bounce. All right. So they stay on your website. They don't bounce, and then they actually stay on your website enough to like kind of get invested in what you're doing. And then they opt in on, to your newsletter. So you've got like this cascading series of miracles. Like the funnel's gone like this. And then they join your newsletter and you're just like, cool, thanks. It's like, these are the hottest leads on your entire website. Why on earth aren't you offering them the opportunity to engage further on your post opt-in thank you page? So we, on every single one of our post opt-in thank you pages, we invite people to a webinar, and we get a lot of people to sign up that way. So that's the first way. The second way is we found people with like large audiences that wanted to share cool content with their audiences, and we like partner with them and do a webinar with them through our affiliate program. So if you have an audience and you want to provide valuable training to that audience and generate some revenue, you can do an affiliate webinar with us, and they convert really well. We've done like I think we've done around 1,000 of them at this point. I know Tim by himself has done, I believe he said 750 webinars at this point. Wow. So he's done a lot of them, and they're just really dialed in. And the audience enjoys them. It's really good content. They learn a lot, and they work. So I'd say it's both through being like really deliberate around how we sort of like sculpt the traffic on our own website and sort of funnel folks into a webinar, and we have our affiliate program.
That's a pretty interesting way of looking at the value of a lead. We're just recognizing that, there's so many places they could be, and you're measuring how hot that lead is based on how far down the funnel they've been in, and taking each level of the funnel as an opportunity to take them somewhere to engage with you. I think even just that framework of thinking would add a lot of value. So thank you, Chris, for asking that. We've got a bunch more questions. I'm just going to keep on going through these.
Okay.
One from Lee Mayati. How do you manage to market your product besides SEO, Facebook ads, or Google Analytics? Basically, maybe another way of asking that is, what are some of your like main channels that you find to be the most effective?
Yeah. So,
webinars are one of them.
I mean, so, channel, I don't know. I think there's really three big buckets. The first bucket is like organic, and I include in organic like SEO, social media, word of mouth, that kind of thing. And then there's paid media, and paid media could be, search engine marketing. It could be retargeting. It could be like Pinterest ads or Instagram ads. It's just any kind of, paid acquisition. And then kind of the third category is content marketing. And then that's your blog, your podcast, webinars, YouTube, like, that whole universe. And, we started off with the blog, and then we expanded to YouTube, and that worked really well. And then we expanded to, our webinars, and then that opened up the affiliate channel, and that opened up, like, everything just leads to something else. And I think it's less about like which channels you pursue, and it's more about like not trying to do everything. So we mastered one channel, which was like, we grew an audience and we knew how to communicate with them through email. That was like we figured that out. Like, we really, really, really honed that craft. Then we moved into video, and I used to make a couple videos a week, and like, we went super deep on video. We just made a ton of videos. So I think it's really just about that versus like trying to do everything at once. Like, hey, I'm doing some paid and some social and this and that. And it's like, don't be everywhere. Like, don't do anything on Twitter or Facebook if you're trying to figure this one thing out. Just go all in on one channel. Either assess, like, if you can make it work there, then double down on it. Or if you can't make it work, move on to something else. But I would encourage everyone to just like stay focused, like really mature your ability to crush it in a given channel, and then move on to the next channel. So I was like Leadpages' first marketer, and my strategy for growing the marketing team was like, I figured out how to make the blog work. So my first hire was the blog, so I could move on and then develop video. And so then I did video, got that working out, and I moved on, hired someone to do video and replicate my success. Because we were bootstrapped, we could never hire someone to do anything that wasn't proven. So I had to like go out, develop a channel, prove that it works, create some patterns and templates and standard operating procedures, and then hire someone to do that and move on to the next thing. And that's how I'd encourage people to do it. And I think that kind of focused approach is the best way to take this up.
So that's interesting. So you, I totally agree with saying hyper-focused on each thing and going deep. I think the insights are where you are when you're going deep, not wide. Yep. But you basically forced yourself to master each channel yourself before you hired someone to replace you. Yep. Is that right?
I did. Yep. Yeah.
Nice. So everyone, were you ever in a position where you're trying to find someone to fill a marketing role that you didn't understand? You're like, oh, I think we should be doing really good video. Obviously that wasn't the case. Maybe I should hire a video guy. Were you ever in that situation?
Yeah. So I made video work like well enough. I'm not a professional videographer, but I could do some light editing, and our videos were crushing it when I stepped away from video. So I'm a content person and a copywriter. I am not an analytics person or an attribution person or a paid person. So I think it's like we figured video and blog posts and webinars and affiliate programs, and I was good at all that stuff. And kind of where I stopped was around paid media, which was fine because like we just didn't have the money to buy traffic, in the first place. So we kind of stopped at paid media and, analytics and retargeting and multi-touch attribution and SEO. And like, those are things that, when the pros came in and kind of took over the marketing department, which is awesome, they really developed those things out. And those were not things that I had any proficiency in. And even the things where I started out developing a channel, like I sucked at it, but as someone who sucked at it, I got it to a place that it was more than paying for itself. And then I hired a pro who would 10x what I was doing, right? Both because they had focus, and two, because they actually knew what the hell they were doing.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a really good, just something to keep in mind for everyone who's in the audience who, you're early, you're wondering how to build out my business, to really just focus on what you know really well, and then go deep into it, and then find people who you can sort of hire to replace that. Because at that moment, even if you're not doing it that well, at least you know what to look for. At least you have a deeper understanding for what to hire for.
Yep.
And I think that's huge when you're just starting off.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We have there's an audience member called Larry Brock, who I think you might know, because he's saying when we had late night chats talks, I thought of you as a very analytical, rational. Over the years, as I've learned more about sales and marketing, most people buy emotionally. How do you, as an analytical person, connect on a feeling level? Have you changed, and are you now more intuitive in feeling? Who is better at marketing, analyticals or intuitives? It's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think there's just, hey, Larry, I used to...
He's in the audience.
I used to, when I was 15, I moved away from home and had this little venture, and Larry let me, I had a little place outside of his house that I stayed at. So yeah, hey, Larry, that's a blast from the past. So I think, I don't really know the answer to that question. I think that when I was developing my blog, it taught me how to connect with people, because every single blog post, like I would launch every single blog post, and I was sort of growing my blog audience, 3 customers or 3 people at a time. And sometimes I noticed I'd write a blog post and it would get a ton of viral traffic, and I'd get a whole bunch of subscribers. And then the next week I'd write a blog post and it would get tons of comments. Nobody would share it, but a whole bunch of people would comment. So they were emotionally engaged. Other times no one would share it and nobody would comment, but it would get a whole bunch of people to buy something from me. And so after a couple years of doing this, I think I really learned how to connect with my market in a specific way. So if I wanted to encourage a certain type of emotion or behavior, I knew what buttons to push to make that happen. If I wanted to create desire or do persuasion, that was a different type of thing. And it was really just kind of trial and error. So I think I'm still an analytical person, but I've just spent so much damn time talking to my market that I can finish their sentences. I know where their head's at. And it's not just blogging. I used to do coaching calls and one-on-one phone calls with people. So I'd spend 10 hours a week just on the phone with clients. And so I put in my 10,000 hours with this market. And I think I know how to talk to this market and write copy for the market. So still analytical, and I think it's just about experience.
Interesting. Are there any books that you'd recommend for understanding, the emotional side or the analytical side?
Yeah, so definitely there's a book called Ogilvy on Advertising, which is really good. I would highly recommend Ogilvy on Advertising. There's a book that is not in publication anymore, but if you dig around on the internet, you can find a PDF. You can find the PDF, and it's called Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz.
Right.
And I would get a copy of that. And then I think on top of that, I would just I would get some of the highest performing infomercials of all time, and I would get them transcribed and read them, like read them as opposed to listening to them. But then I would also rip them to MP3 and put them on my phone and play them at like 2x, 3x, 4x speed while I was like driving around. And like the Ginsu Knife one and the P90X and all these different things. And I'd play the audio of them at usually triple speed and just like drive around and just take in persuasion. And maybe that had the biggest effect on me at all. I also found other top performing webinars and had them transcribed and also listened to those MP3s. So it's like lots of those types of things.
Wow. Yeah. So it's totally like absorbing as much information as possible and like steeping yourself until you're just like so deep in it. People like Marie, she's saying awesome to get these insights from Clay. Thanks, guys. I mean, we're at the end of the hour, so there's a lot of other topics I want to touch on, like how you deal with transparency as a business and authenticity. Just you personally, but also the company. How do you work with competitors and your philosophy around that? But we'll probably save that for maybe another time in the future.
Awesome.
But one thing I want to announce or just mention is just a couple of days ago we launched our drip integration, and if you see this big orange button underneath our faces, you'll see that it's live. And how it works is, when you're doing a Crowdcast, we have all this data around, are you live, are you watching the replay, how engaged you are, and things like that. And so we've integrated with drip so that we can actually let you know of the people who registered, who showed up. What segment do they fall into, and then you can use that data to really create like fairly interesting and complex, processes, workflows to target those people separately. So we're super excited to have that out there, and there's going to be more integrations like it coming, but Drip is the first one.
Yeah, I love the way you guys did your Drip integration. So like, what most people do is like maybe they'll send over like one event with some metadata tags, and like what you guys do is you just send over like all your data to Drip, and it shows up on the customer timeline. Like, hey, there's a event when someone registers, when they showed up, when they leave, and so you can create these really complex workflows. It's not very prescriptive. You guys can do whatever you want with it. I think to date it's the best webinar integration for Drip, and I'd highly encourage everyone to try it. It allows you to do all kinds of crazy workflow segmentation stuff. It's just super well done. So thanks for being so just kind of thoughtful and astute with your Drip integration. I think the spirit of how you guys did your Drip integration is very in line with like how Rob and Derek think, and it's very in line with like the technical vision behind Drip. So it's super cool to see you do it this way.
I'm sure Dylan, who worked on it, is going to be super proud to hear about that. But yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. And the last thing I want to sort of just wrap up and end with is just, do you have any advice? A lot of the folks in the audience, they're just getting started or they're midway in their journey. Yeah. Is there any advice you'd give them, to sort of remind themselves of something that really helped you?
So the question is just like, what advice would I have for people getting started?
Just getting started.
Yeah. I think my advice is that like, this is so hard, and it's going to take a lot of time. I think my advice is kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, like only do it if you can't not do it. If it's even an option for you in your brain, like if you want to do a startup or not, or if you want to build a company, I would just say don't do it. Find something more comfortable, and I would say also learn marketing. It's not dirty. It's not bad. It's not an evil craft, and especially if you really believe that what you're offering is good, then I think you owe it to your market to like not hold back, to not sell from your heels, to not tentatively say like, well, I kind of sort of maybe have this thing. Like, let your light shine, right? Let the brilliance of your passion and your vision flow through to everyone. And don't be shy about saying, hey, I have this thing to offer the world. Here's what it is. Here's the price point. We're going to crush it for you. Let's move forward. Like, that is okay to do. So I think that's my message there.
I think that's very well said. That's very well said. And so we're going to wrap this up right now, but we do these Crowdcast talks around every 2 weeks, and the intention is to, just like this, we go deep and really hear about the journey of some amazing thought leaders and change makers and leaders in the world. And I'm really excited to have Clay here. And above our videos, you'll see a big follow button. So if you follow us, you'll get notified about the next Crowdcast talk. So thank you so much, Clay. Thank you, everyone else. Let's give a virtual round of applause with emojis to Clay, and we'll sort of and just like wrap things up. So thank you so much, Clay. We'll see you another time. We'll see you soon.
Awesome, and I'll clap back at you here with emojis. All right, thank you.
All right, catch you guys later. Bye.